They say a mother's touch is supposed to heal. But what if the only touch you ever knew from your mother was a fist? And what if the day you finally believed you'd die in that house, a quiet man walked in? A man the town feared so much they wouldn't even say his name out loud. And he didn't ask permission. He didn't negotiate. He simply took you away. This is the story of Lila Crow and the mountain man who dragged her out of hell into a life she never expected. Before we begin, if you love slow, emotional Old West stories told like legends around a campfire, hit subscribe, because this one stays with you. The heat in Red Hollow, Wyoming didn't float in the air. It pressed down like an iron lid on a boiling pot. It was 1884, and dust from the silver mines coated everything: the windows, the porch rails, even the prayers. At the edge of town sat a shack that leaned like it had given up trying, and inside that shack, an 18-year-old girl scrubbed wooden planks until her fingers split open. Her name was Lila. She didn't scrub because she cared about cleanliness. She scrubbed because scrubbing kept her busy, and busy meant she could pretend she didn't hear the sound behind her. Creak, creak, creak. The rocking chair in the corner. A countdown. Lila kept her eyes on the floorboards, kept her breathing small, kept her shoulders tight, because she knew a truth most people never learn. In some houses, silence isn't peace. Silence is a predator deciding where to bite first. Then came the voice, wet with cheap whiskey. You missed a spot. Lila's whole body flinched before her mind could answer. That flinch had been trained into her bones. I'll get it, Mama. I'm sorry. Martha Crow wasn't built like a mother. She looked like bitterness that learned to walk. Her skin was too thin, her cheeks too sharp, her eyes, the kind you see in animals that have been starving too long. Eyes that don't look at you like a person, but like something to blame. Martha stood from the rocking chair with a groan. She shuffled forward, and without warning, she kicked the water bucket. Dirty gray water splashed across Lila's dress, flooded the exact spot she'd just scrubbed raw. Martha watched her like she was watching a joke. You look at you, useless, clumsy, same as your father. Lila swallowed hard. Her father had died in a mine collapse years ago, and somehow, even dead, he still got blamed for Martha's misery. You think scrubbing a floor pays for this roof, pays for my medicine, pays for my whiskey? No, Mama, Lila whispered, staring at the spreading puddle like it could swallow her whole. Get up. Martha grabbed a fistful of Lila's hair and yanked her upright. Lila bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood, because screaming made it worse, crying made it longer. Go to Ridgewell's general store. Mr. Ridgewell said he needs deliveries done. Martha's eyes narrowed like knives. And you don't come back without $2 or a bottle of rye. She turned her head slowly toward the fireplace poker leaning near the stove. If you do, she said softly, you know where the poker sleeps. Lila nodded. Her body moved before her mind did. She stumbled outside into the sunlight, and the sun felt like mercy. Outside, Red Hollow was alive with mean men. Miners watched her pass, faces streaked with soot, eyes hungry in the wrong way. She pulled her shawl tighter and kept her head down, because in Red Hollow, a girl like Lila wasn't a person. She was a rumor, a target, a thing. When she pushed open Ridgewell's door, the bell jingled bright and cheerful, and it felt like the bell was lying. Mr. Ridgewell stood behind the counter, weighing flour. He saw the bruise on her jaw. He saw the swollen lip. And like most decent men in towns like this, he looked away. Afternoon, Lila, he muttered. Yes, sir. You, looking for work? Lila's heart pounded. If you have any, she said quickly. Anything. Sweeping, carrying, cleaning. Ridgewell sighed. I ain't got much today. Mine's slow. Lila's stomach dropped. If she went home empty, it wasn't the belt today. It was the poker. Please, she whispered. Just something. Ridgewell's face tightened like guilt. He reached under the counter and pulled out a single silver dollar. It's charity, he said. Take it and go. I can't have your mama coming down here screaming again. Lila stared at the coin. $1 wasn't enough. Rye cost more than that, and Martha's $2 wasn't a request, it was a sentence. Lila's hands shook so badly she almost dropped the coin. And then the light in the store changed. Not because the sun moved, because someone stepped into the doorway. The air shifted. The miners by the stove went quiet. Even the flies seemed to stop buzzing. Lila turned slowly. A man stood there. Not tall like a rancher, not big like a miner. This was different. He was built like the mountains had carved him from stone. A heavy coat of furs, boots packed with trail mud, a thick dark beard hiding half his face, a hat pulled low, shadowing eyes that looked like winter itself. People didn't greet him. They just watched him carefully, because this was Elias Granger. The town called him the quiet giant of Frostpin Ridge. He came down only a few times a year to trade pelts for supplies, and the stories around him were poisonous. They said he'd killed a man in Denver. They said wolves followed him like dogs. They said he didn't talk because he didn't need to. Elias walked to the counter, each step heavy. He dropped a burlap sack down. Thud. The sound alone made men swallow. He opened it. Inside were pelts, fox, beaver, winter white rabbit, pristine, a fortune. Lila tried to slip past him toward the door, but her shoe caught a loose floorboard. She stumbled and collided into his arm. His arm didn't move. It felt like running into a tree trunk. Lila gasped and recoiled. I'm sorry, sir."
She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the hit, because in Red Holo, men hit you when you were in their way. Silence. She opened one eye. Elias was looking down at her. His eyes were a pale gray, the color of ice just before it cracks. He wasn't angry. He was assessing. His gaze dipped to the bruise on her jaw, then her raw knuckles, then the way she stood, flinching like someone who had learned pain as a language. Elias looked at Ridgewell. For the first time, he spoke. A low voice, deep as distant thunder. "Who is she?" Ridgewell swallowed hard. That's Leela, Martha Crow's girl." Elias looked back at her. He extended his hand, massive, scarred, calloused, not grabbing, just waiting. Leela stared at that hand like it was a trap. Slowly, trembling, she placed her battered hand in his. He pulled her upright with effortless strength. Ridgewell tried to save the moment. "Go on home, Leela. Take the $1." Leela clutched the coin. Tears burned her eyes. "It's not enough," she whispered, more to herself than anyone. "She'll kill me." Elias went still, like a predator hearing a twig snap. "Who will?" Leela's voice shook. "My mother." Elias stared at her for a long moment, then pushed all the pelts toward Ridgewell. "Credit," he said. Ridgewell blinked. "Elias, that's over $200. Elias didn't care. He turned his body, blocking Leela's path to the exit, and then he looked down at her and said the words that changed everything. "Take me to her." Leela's breath caught. "To my mother?" "Yes." "Why?" Elias adjusted the knife on his hip like it was a casual thing. "Because I have business." The bell jingled violently as he walked out first, and Leela stood there frozen, realizing she was about to lead one monster to another monster. Outside, the town parted for Elias like fear had hands. When they reached the shack, Leela hesitated with her hand on the knob. "She's not well," she warned. Elias didn't answer. He reached past her and pushed the door open. Inside, Martha Crow stood waiting, fire poker in hand, eyes bright with anticipation. "You little brat, I told you if you didn't—" Martha stopped mid-sentence because Elias Granger filled the doorway, blocking the sun. Martha's poker lowered.
"What do you want?" she snapped, forcing toughness into her voice. "Get out of my house." Elias stepped inside. The floorboards groaned under him. The shack suddenly felt like a coffin. He looked around. Filth, empty bottles, the spilled gray water. Then he looked at Martha. "I hear you have debts," Elias said. Martha blinked. "Everyone has debts. What's it to you?" "I'm settling accounts." He pulled out a heavy leather pouch and tossed it onto the table. Coins clinked. Gold. Martha's eyes widened, her lips parted. Elias's voice stayed cold. 500. Martha licked her lips. "What do I have to do?" she asked, low, greedy. She reached for the pouch. Elias slammed his hand down on it. "You don't have to do anything," he said, "but I'm taking something." Martha's smile twisted. "Take it," she laughed. "Furniture, land, whatever." Elias lifted one finger and pointed. Not at furniture, not at land, at Leela. Her. The room went silent. Leela forgot how to breathe. Martha looked at Leela, then at the gold, and then she smiled like a knife. "For 500? She cackled. "Take her. She eats too much anyway." Leela felt something inside her crack. Not her heart, something deeper. The last thread of "maybe she cares" finally snapped. Elias didn't look triumphant. He looked disgusted. He removed his hand from the pouch. "Done," he said. Then he turned to Leela. "Pack what you can carry." Leela's tears fell fast. "Where are we going?" she whispered. Elias leaned down, eyes like winter. Away. Then softer, dangerously softer. "Do you want to stay?" Leela looked at Martha, already opening the pouch like a child on Christmas, looked at the poker, looked at the man built from silence. Known hell or unknown snow. She ran to her corner, grabbed a shawl, a comb, and a faded photo of her father. That was it. Her entire life fit in her arms. "I'm ready," she whispered. Elias nodded once, and as they stepped into the sunlight, Leland watched Red Hollow like a town watching a funeral. Leela climbed onto the wagon waiting at the edge of town. The horses moved, not towards the mines, but towards the frost pine ridges. And as the road climbed and the air turned cold, Elias finally spoke again, and the one sentence he said made Leela's blood run colder than the snow. "Before we reach my cabin, you need to understand what's hunting me." The climb lasted hours. The dusty heat of Red Hollow gave way to thin mountain air that tasted like pine needles in distant storms. Leela sat rigid on the wagon, hands clenched until her fingers ached. Elias drove without speaking, and silence, real silence, was dangerous to Leela. Because her whole life, silence meant the hit is coming. The sun dipped behind jagged peaks, cold, sharpened. Leela started to shiver. Elias stopped the wagon. Her heart snapped tight. This is it, she thought. This is where he demands payment. But Elias didn't touch her like a man claiming property. He reached behind the seat and pulled out a thick wool blanket. He wrapped it around her shoulders carefully, almost like he'd done it before. "Breathe," he grunted. Leela blinked. "What?" "You're shaking." "I'm fine," she lied. "Don't lie," he said, stern, yet not cruel. "And don't call me sir. Elias." He handed her dried venison. "Eat." She took it with shaking fingers. Then the question slipped out before she could stop it. "Why?" Elias stared at the trail ahead. "Why what?" "Why did you buy me?" Elias's jaw tightened. "I didn't buy you. I paid a ransom." "It's the same," Leela snapped, surprising even herself. "I was property there, I'm property now." Elias turned his head slowly. His eyes hardened, not with anger, but something older. "You think you're property?" he said, quietly. He gestured at the endless wilderness. "Out here, there is no property, only survival." Then, like a verdict, "You were dying in that house." Leela's throat tightened. And what do you want from me?" Elias swallowed as if the words were heavy. "I want you to live," he said. "That's all." The wagon couldn't go farther when the trail turned rocky and steep. They walked. Snow swallowed Leela's boots. Her feet went numb. Elias moved like he belonged to the mountain. Leela moved like someone the world had always pushed down. Twice she fell. The second time she twisted her ankle. A cry escaped her. Elias stopped instantly and came back. He didn't scold, he didn't sigh in annoyance. He simply crouched and lifted her into his arms like she weighed nothing. "Put me down," she gasped, humiliated. "I can walk." "Your ankle is swelling," he said flatly, "and you're slowing me down." He carried her the last mile. Leela's head rested against his chest. She heard his heart, steady and calm. And in that terrifying calm, something unfamiliar happened. She felt safe. Then the cabin appeared, a fortress of thick logs, chimney breathing smoke into the night, pines surrounding it like guards. Elias kicked the door open and carried her inside. Warmth hit her like a physical blow. It wasn't filthy, it wasn't chaotic. It was orderly. Rugs, shelves, a stone fireplace with glowing coals, and something that shocked her. Books, hundreds of them. Elias set her in a chair near the fire. "Stay." He moved around lighting lamps. Then he returned with socks, a basin, and water. He knelt and began unlacing her wet boots. Leela jerked her feet back. "What are you doing?" "Saving your toes," he said, like it was obvious. "If we warm them wrong, you lose them." His hands were rough but careful, firm, not harmful. It didn't make sense. A man who looked like he could kill bears, kneeling to warm her feet. Leela whispered, "Why do you have so many books?" Elias kept working. "Winters are long," he said. "If you don't keep your mind alive, the silence eats you." "Can you read them all?" He glanced up, a flicker of something, almost amusement. "I wrote 3. Leela stared. "You're a writer?" "I was a lot of things," he murmured. "Now I'm just a man who doesn't want to be found." He stood, towering again. "There's a room in the back," he said. "It's yours." A pause. "There's a bolt on the door," he added, looking straight at her. "You lock it. No one comes in unless you open it. Not even me." That sentence hit Leela harder than a slap. A lock on the inside. In Martha's house, locks were keeping Leela trapped. Here, the lock was for keeping Leela safe. She limped into the room and found a warm blue wool dress laid on the bed, too fine for her world. She changed quickly. Then her fingers found something in the pocket. A silver locket. Inside, a tiny photo of a woman with laughing eyes, holding a baby. Leela's stomach turned cold. Who were they? And the darker thought, where are they now? She hid the locket and returned to the main room. Elias served stew into 2 bowls. He sat and started eating. Leela stood by the wall, hands clasped, head down, waiting. Elias stopped chewing. "What are you doing?" "Waiting," she whispered. "For what?" "For you to finish so I can eat what's left." Elias slammed his spoon down. The sound made Leela jump. "Sit," he snapped. Leela scrambled into the chair, shaking. Elias took a breath, like he was wrestling a ghost. "I'm not your mother," he said low. "You do not eat scraps. You eat until you are full." Leela stared at the stew like it wasn't real. She ate, and tears dropped into the bowl because her body didn't know how to accept kindness without fear. After dinner, Elias pointed upward. "I sleep in the loft," he said. Then he pointed to her door. "You lock it." Leela went into her room. She slid the bolt. Click. For the first time in her life, she was locked in a room, and she wasn't the prisoner. She was the one with control. She collapsed on the bed and cried silently until sleep took her. 3 weeks later, during a blizzard, Leela finally asked about the locket, and Elias answered with a name that made his voice break. "She was my wife." Then the barking outside stopped, and someone hammered the door and shouted, "We found you, Granger, or should I say, Captain." The blizzard screamed around the cabin like a living thing. Elias stood by the window, rifle in hand, lantern blown out. "Get in your room," he hissed. "Lock the door. Don't come out." Lila backed away, heart pounding. The hammering on the cabin door shook the logs. "Open up!" a sharp voice shouted. "We know you're in there!" It wasn't a mountain voice. It was city clean, arrogant. Elias's jaw tightened. "You got the wrong man," Elias boomed. The voice laughed. "Wrong man? Captain Jonah Rourke says otherwise." Lila froze. "Captain?" Elias's shoulders shifted like the past had grabbed him by the throat. "We have a warrant," the man yelled, "for the murder of General Halden in '65. Lila's blood turned to ice. Elias glanced toward her door. He didn't want her to see this, but the past didn't care what Elias wanted. "Do you trust me?" Elias whispered. Lila thought of the blanket, the stew, the bolt on the inside. "Yes," Lila whispered. "Then get under the bed," Elias said. "Cover your ears." He overturned the table for cover. "Come and take me!" Elias roared. The door exploded inward with a shotgun blast. Snow burst into the cabin. 3 men stormed in with long coats and guns. The first rifle shot cracked like lightning. A man fell backward into the snow. Bullets tore wood. Splinters flew. From under the bed, Lila saw only chaos, muzzle flashes, shadow, blood darkening white rugs. The lamp shattered, oil spilled, a blue flame crawled near the hearth. "Flank him!" the leader screamed, his voice shaking now. Elias moved like a predator. He didn't stay still. He shifted positions between shots like he was born for war. One attacker rushed in close. Elias smashed the rifle butt into the man's face. Bone cracked. The man dropped. Now it was Elias and the leader. The leader rose with a revolver aimed at Elias's chest. Elias lifted his rifle. Click. Empty. The leader smiled. "Gotcha." Lila's mind screamed, "Not again." She wouldn't watch another person she cared about be destroyed, not while she hid. She crawled out, grabbed the first heavy thing she touched, a cast-iron skillet on the stove. It burned her palm. She didn't feel it. The leader turned his head for a split second. That second was enough. Elias charged. He slammed into the man with brutal force. The revolver fired into the ceiling. The fight became fists, ugly, close, primal. Then silence. The leader lay motionless. Elias stood over him, breathing hard, then staggered. A dark stain spread across his shoulder. He had been shot. "Elias!" Lila cried, rushing to him. He looked down at her, gray eyes hazy. "You came out," Elias rasped. "I told you." "You needed help," she whispered. He looked at the skillet, a ghost of a smile. "Yeah," he breathed. "I did." Then Elias the giant collapsed. The rest of the night was survival. Lila dragged bodies out into the snow, boiled water, tore cloth into bandages, poured whiskey into the wound. Elias hissed but didn't scream. He watched her work like he was seeing her for the first time. When she finished, she threw the bloody cloth into the fire. "Captain?" she whispered. Elias closed his eyes. "That name is dead." "They said you murdered a general." Elias opened his eyes, pain deeper than the bullet. "I executed a war criminal," he said. Then in the firelight, he told her the truth. A surrendering camp, an order to slaughter prisoners. Elias refused. The general pulled a gun. Elias shot first. Justice, labeled as murder. He ran, changed his name, built a life on the ridge. Then smallpox took his wife and daughter. And when Elias saw Lila in the store, bruised and flinching, he couldn't leave her there, because saving her was the closest thing to saving the family he lost. Lila's throat tightened. Then Elias's voice hardened. "Listen," he said, "that man wasn't alone. Others will come." "What do we do?" Lila asked. "Not we," Elias said. "Me." He tried to sit up. "Tomorrow I go down the mountain," he said. "I surrender." Lila's blood turned to ice. "They'll hang you." "If I stay, they'll burn this place down, and if they find you with me, they'll call you an accomplice." He reached for a thick envelope, land papers, bank credit. "Take this," he ordered. "When soldiers come, you tell them I kidnapped you. You play victim. You go west."
Lila stared at the papers. Safety, freedom, a life she dreamed of, and it made her sick. "You think they'll give you a trial?" he asked. "I'm entitled—" "You're a fool," Lila snapped. Elias blinked, stunned. Lila walked to the dead leader's coat and pulled out a crumpled telegram. She slammed it on the table. "Read it." Elias read. His face drained. The telegram didn't say arrest. It said, "Execute on sight, no witnesses." Lila's voice shook. "They're not coming to arrest you. They're coming to erase you." Elias roared in frustration. "If I stay, they kill you too." He grabbed his bag and stumbled for the door. "I'll draw them away." Then, clack, the sound of a rifle being racked. Elias froze. He turned slowly. Lila stood there holding his Winchester, steady, not trembling, barrel aimed at his chest. "No," she said. Elias's voice dropped. "Put it down." "No," she repeated. "You're not leaving." Elias stared at the girl who used to flinch at every breath, now aiming a rifle at the only man she trusted, and she said the word that shattered his plan. "You're my family." Then outside, in the storm, a distant horn echoed, meaning more men were already on the ridge.
The dawn didn't rise over Frost Pine Ridge. It bled into the sky, purple and bruised. Inside the cabin, smoke and cold mixed in the air. Elias stared at the rifle in Lila's hands. He could overpower her. He could take it away. But he didn't. Because what he saw in her eyes wasn't rebellion. It was something rarer. Self-worth. Lila's voice shook but didn't break. "You saved me from hell," she said. "You showed me I'm worth more than the dirt on a floor." Tears gathered, yet her aim stayed steady. "And now, you want to throw your life away for people who want you dead." Elias swallowed hard. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Lila snapped. "I don't want to be saved if it means you die." Her breath hitched. "I would rather freeze on this mountain with you than live safe somewhere knowing I let you walk to your execution." Then she said it again, quiet, final. "You're my family." That word hung in the cabin like a sacred thing. Family. Elias, who had lived years believing he deserved only punishment, looked like someone being offered life for the first time. His shoulders sagged. The fight drained out of him. He let the bag drop. "If we stay, we die," he whispered. "Then we don't stay," Lila said. "We don't go down, we go up." Elias stared toward the upper ridge. "The high pass in winter," he said. "That's suicide." Lila's voice tightened. "You marked caves on your maps," she said. "You know places the soldiers don't." "We have furs," she whispered. "We have fire. We have each other." Elias looked at her like he was finally seeing who she'd become. The girl he'd rescued wasn't a victim anymore. She was a partner, a leader. He reached out with his good hand and slowly lowered the rifle barrel. Lila didn't resist. Elias pulled her into his arms, careful of his wound. For a long moment he just held her, like he was afraid the world would take her away too. "All right," he whispered into her hair. "We go up." They moved fast. No sentiment, no delays. They packed ammo, salt, coffee, blankets, furs. Elias looked at his shelves of books, and his eyes darkened. He took the 3 books he had written, his true pride, and ripped pages out for kindling, leaving the covers behind, leaving his old identity behind. They dragged the bodies into the cellar and collapsed the roof over them, a grave for men who came to erase a life. Then Elias grabbed kerosene, splashed the floor. Lila watched the place that had given her home burn, not because home was a building, but because home was now a decision. We will not be owned again. Elias held the match. "Ready?"
Leela looked toward the ridge, white, cruel, endless. And she thought of Martha, of the poker, of years stolen. Her jaw set. "Burn it," she said. Elias dropped the match. Fire roared. Smoke rose like a signal, meant to confuse the trackers. They strapped on snowshoes and climbed into the sky. The wind erased their tracks within minutes. Below, soldiers arrived to find a burned cabin and no bodies. They searched. They cursed. They sent dogs. But the mountains swallowed everything. Days became weeks. Weeks became rumors. In Red Hollow, people whispered. Some said Elias killed the girl and died in the flames. Some said the army caught them both. But old trappers, men who knew the upper ridges, told a different story. They spoke of two figures on the high cliffs at sunrise, a man like a shadow, and a woman beside him, standing tall, not flinching, not begging, free. Years later, when Leela would touch the scar on her palm from that skillet burn, she would remember the moment her life changed. Not the day Elias bought her freedom, but the day she pointed a rifle at his chest and said, "No, you don't get to die. Not after you taught me how to live." And somewhere high above the world, beyond law and town cruelty, they became what the world couldn't break. A legend.